It's my first Dumble. A friend of mine found it, and he was looking for a bass amp and bought it from the yard sale for what you would think a yard sale bass amp would cost and should cost. Got it home and realized what he had pretty quickly and called me up. He was excited that he found not only a Dumble, obviously, but he thought of me as soon as he found out what it was. And I had first crack at it, and it's the first Dumble I ever owned.
How long have you been thinking about doing this?
Since the day I got the amp 25 years ago. We're gonna get this one between these two. Of course, it'll be in the middle of those. I just saw these hanging here and they look decent. Oh, and we also need naphtha. If you find a woman who will send you naphtha in an Uber, marry her right away.
Wise words.
Now there's just too many selections. This is what we want. That's it. This is crazy. It's so crazy. And it's also hard to talk about with him gone because these are memories that I hold so dear. So as I'm talking about it, I'm like, oh man, I haven't talked about this shit at all with anybody. Like I probably should have done some grief counseling before I actually did the interview type shit. It took a lot to surprise Dumble. He had seen and heard pretty much everything at a certain point. So this was my first Dumble, and when I walked in with it to have him go over it, because we had talked about him making me one, but I needed one in real time because I had Jackson Browne's Stevie Ray amp. But traveling with that, it was a lot, and it was kind of, you just had to be on 24-hour amp watch. Not that I'm not on 24-hour amp watch with all my Dumbles, but that one in particular had too much provenance not to sort of retire and get off the road. And it was extremely generous of Jackson to loan it to me. So when I found this one, I was able to get that one back to Jackson. Jackson put me in touch with Dumble. Before I got this amp, Jackson had actually already put me in touch with Dumble, and Dumble and I were talking about making me an amp from scratch, which he eventually did, which I think was the last amp he ever made. Word on the street was that, if you got a Dumble second hand, third hand, you had to make sure it was kosher with him, really. Like you can't, there was a code of honor and ethics when it came to procuring a Dumble that didn't come from Dumble directly. So I called him to let him know hey, I hope this is cool. I got this Dumble, a friend of mine found it at a yard sale. He said, bring it in right away. I said, oh, great. So that was my first trip into Dumble, was with this amp. And when it was covered with black shag carpet, this one showed up. I brought it out to Dumble and brought it in the house, and it definitely raised both eyebrows. He was surprised to see it. And it didn't need much. He said, as a matter of fact, it like almost needed like nothing, minor adjustments, rebiasing and so on. But anyway, should we?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Yeah, interestingly enough, it's 0009, and it's also 0109. So it's as if he started with 0009 and then remembered he was going to start at 100, and then he double serial numbered at 0109. I brought it in, and immediately his eyes raised. And he said, check this out. And he peeled a piece of the back. He says, white Tolex, hold on a second. He disappeared off into a back room, which I'd later learned is kind of his records room, or where he kept all his books. And he dug around, pulled out boxes, climbed up on ladders, pulled out more boxes, and came out with the carbon copy bill of sale. He said, you know what that is? I was like, no. I said, it's one of the Beach Boy amps. Wow, okay. But he knew what it was right away, and he got excited about it. Like he instantly checked the serial number, went into the records room and started. I mean, it was fun. It was great to see him that excited about an amp he built that long ago. It was like one of his kids returned home. So I'm excited to bring it back to its original white Tolex glory. I don't know if we're going to get all the way down the line today, but we'll get somewhere. Yeah. What I loved about it too is when Dumble saw it, he was excited. He was kind of giddy. He was like, "Look what's shown back up. Look what's walked back through my door." You know. Now, if you guys can remind me, I'm going top left, counterclockwise. Once he knew the amp that it was and was sure of it, we started to peel the back off. We said, let's go. Maybe let's try to get it off. So we started pulling off the back, and we had stripped the entire back. But he's very meticulous. So we were meticulous today, but he was really methodical in lifting it, getting it off. And so over the course of an hour, we had gotten that back off. Dumble moves at a very particular pace. Everything is very slow, methodical, almost monk-like. It's religious, the way that he would work. I mean, I never saw him make a fast move in any regard of his life, any step of his life. So after a while, we finally got the back off, and then we said, okay, well, let's get the rest of it off. It looks like all the Tolex is there. The good thing about just a gritty cloth is that it's not going to scratch the Tolex. It's got enough teeth to pull, but not enough to harm. How much he loved music. That was everything for him. I mean, he almost loved music more than he loved amps. I mean, he just loved music. There was music playing in his house all the time. Every time I was there, and all we ever talked about was music and musicians. All we ever did is jam. If there was one thing, just his passion for music. It all started there. And of course, he was a player. He was a monster player. A lot of people don't know that, but when he'd get in the zone and just start, when it wasn't about amps, when it became more about music than amps, he'd take you on a journey. And I'd just chunk out rhythm for him, and we'd find a progression and just lean into it for hours, you know. And a real sweetheart, just a beautiful, beautiful man from another time. An artist, and most artisans that are as accomplished and mysterious as him have one foot in the future and one foot way in the past, and that was him. I'm ecstatic. I'm thrilled. I've been restoring instruments my entire adult life and my entire life with my grandfather and my family's music shop. And I mean, I've restored pre-war triple O 28s that were thrown out of third-story windows. From that to some of the earliest Gibson master tones to 150-year-old German violins. And you just never know what you're going to get when you get inside of an instrument and who's been there before you, how it's going to react. This is I think how Dumble would do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. While I was hopeful all the white Tolex was intact, I'm just thrilled that the wood is in the shape that it's in. You know, it being now half or three-quarter Tolex. I mean, when you look around the back of it, the wood that is exposed is part of this amp's story. It's the life it's lived. Tolex, 50% wood. Oh my God, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. Even with the 50-50, it's just beautiful. It's beautiful. And the curvature, the Dumble curvatures, you know, it's just, yeah. Oh, it feels so good to have that off there. Wow. I can't believe we did it.
So good.
Oh, look at that, man. Look at that. Had no idea what today would look like. And it could have been better, could have been all there, and it could have been a lot worse. Yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. She's perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. Yeah, even if there was all raw wood under there, I would have been just happy to get that black shag off there. I mean, it's the equivalent of restoring an ancient fresco or something like that. I mean, Dumble is the Stradivarius of guitar amplifiers, period. That's just what that is. To take the care we did and the time that we did with it today, we could go further. You know, we could get every little bit of the contact cement off of the Tolex. We could whip the wood into some kind of shape that it would be glowing and perfect. I like it rough like this. I like it raw. I like the Tolex where I like that we've gotten the carpet off, but left its patina, left its story. There's still a story there. We haven't tried to pretend it's anything other than what it is. Yeah. And that's always the approach I took to restoring instruments when I worked in a music store. Just the bare minimum to keep the story of the instrument alive.
Last question, if you could say anything to him right now, alone in the room, what would you tell him?
One thing with Dumble, alone in the room, I would tell him, I tell him I wrote a song called We Need to Talk About It, and there's a solo in that song that I think is possibly the strongest solo I've ever taken, and it's on the Dumble. I took that solo on the song We Need to Talk About It on the day I found out Dumble died, and I played that solo, just guitar straight through the Dumble, and it's as close as I've come. If I had to pick one solo in my whole arsenal, it would be that piece, and I'd say, hey man, I'd bring that piece to him and say, thank you for elevating my playing to a place where I could take a solo like this. Not that I'm bragging about my own work, but I'm quite proud of that particular solo, and it wouldn't exist in the way that it does if it weren't for his amp. So I just say thank you.